Hello, good evening, world. So, you're welcome to another edition of Live with OSA, and I'm owning Scott-Ananaba, OSA for short. So, tonight I have a special guest with me in the studio. Um, Quite beloved to me, I dare say, but she's just a special person, and her name is Daisy E. Jonathan. She actually is a woman of many, many, many parts, a woman of many, many parts. And for today, we will just simply be focusing on just one important part of her. But before we go ahead, I want to just welcome everybody who has kept faith with us today. And today is a very, very special one. Like I said, we'll be speaking to Daisy Jonathan, Daisy Esohe Jonathan. She is the author of Help That Child. It's her recent publication. But before I bring her into the studio, I quickly would want to just run through her bio for those of you who do not know her already. So Daisy Esohe Jonathan is a certified educator, an applied behavior analyst, and qualified autism services supervisor. She's also an advanced certified autism specialist, a board certified cognitive specialist, and a qualified autism services practitioner supervisor with vast knowledge and experience in helping individuals with autism and other disorders. She holds a Master of Science degree in Education, Walden University, Masters in Business Administration from the University of Wales, and has completed behavioral analyst coursework at Bradman University. She serves as a training and education consultant with vast skills in curriculum planning, setting inclusive systems, and advocacy. She is the convener and originator of Autism and Special Needs Support Africa, a platform for stakeholders in the autism and special needs sector. So it gives me great, great pleasure. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today our guest for this evening, Daisy Esohe Jonathan. Hello, Daisy.
Hi, Pastor Nene.
It's
Thank
so
you so
good to
much for
see you this
having me.
evening. Thank you very
Thank
much. It's so,
you.
so good to see you this evening. In fact, we're wearing Help That Child. You see, I'm an
Yeah,
advocate already. Yes, help that child, help that child. So you're welcome, Daisy. I've just done the needful, I've just wet the ground. I've just shared your bio. Wow, an awesome bio, I dare say. And
thank you.
yes, like I said, you're a woman of many parts. You've done so many hats. But tonight, we'll be talking to Daisy Esohe Jonathan, the author of Help That Child. I know it was your most recent publication because I know you have other publications under your belt. So talk to us, Daisy. Why help that child? Because before I even go ahead, I remember one of the things I put, let me quickly put up the poster we used. I said, I quoted, this is you, I quoted from you, and you said, it's not just a book, it's a movement geared to change narratives. So over to you, Daisy. Talk to us.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much, Pastor Nene. So sometime in January this year, at the beginning of the year, I kind of like put together a map of what my year would look like, God being my helper. And one of the things I said was, all those books I have written, and I have about 4 or 5 of them. I read, I write, and then I say, okay, I will publish later. So I said one of the things I will do this year is to publish at least 3 or 4 of them. So I started to put those books together. I hadn't written this one. And then that morning, I was on a platform for parents and teachers on Facebook. And someone posted the photograph of a child in school who had been beaten up by the class teacher for, I don't know what the crime was. And, you could see the injury and I cringed, So I wanted to type my response. And then I said, let me read through what others are saying. Now, this is a group of thousands of parents and educators, teachers, and the responses shocked me. I was shocked to my bone marrow. People were saying, oh, these stubborn children, they won't bring them up at home, and all of those. And no one was talking about the fact that this child had just been abused. This child, a very young child, say maybe 7, 8,
Wow.
it's the photograph was, it just clung to my memory. So I said I was going to respond and I started to type. Now on social media platforms, I'm usually very careful what I write. So
Yeah.
I said before I type, let me just sit down and put my points down. I mean, this is not something I'll just walk away. I'll put my points down. So I started to put these points down. And then I started to say, okay, maybe I won't understand this. Let me just expatiate a bit. And then it became an entire page. And I said, how on earth do I put this page on Facebook? And then it became, before you know it, I had the bullet points, and I said, maybe I should just write a book on this. So I started to write, and that was January this year. I started to write, and as has become my habit, I got to a point and I said, oh, no need, and I dropped it there. But somehow something was pushing me to say, Daisy, each time I want to stop, something else happens. It's either I see a photograph of a child that was maltreated, or a parent calls me up to say, Daisy, what do I do about this child? Or, so something always will come up. And then I will go back to add an additional chapter. So that's how the book came. But by the time I got to the 7th chapter, I said, you know what, I can't go back anymore. This is the first book I want to publish. I want to put this word out there and I want to talk about it. And the stories I had took me, years back into my childhood, things that, I went through, as a child and as a teenager that I could not express at the time because I was scared. Stuff would happen and you don't know what the reaction of your parents God bless them, fantastic parents. But because you didn't want all of that screaming and the yelling, and you rather just
Exactly.
endure. So I went back, and all of the days I was going through my archives, I saw points and stories I had written as a teenager. So I wrote as far back as when I was 16, and then I could read from a younger me. I saw a poem I wrote, and one of the poems said, "Let me make my mistakes and learn." So I could read, and I said, if the people around me had just read these things I was writing at that time, perhaps they would have been able to, get, through to me and understand me a lot better. Again, if we have to connect that to the teenagers I work with in the church, I mentor, again, I see the struggle. So that's where, Help That Child. So it started as a book, but it started well as a thought, let me change
As a thought,
how this,
yes.
yes, let me change how these people are thinking. Let me change, maybe one or two persons will agree. And then I wrote the book. But when I wrote the book, it wasn't about writing a book. It was about changing the narrative, the whole
To
feeling
change the
that,
narrative.
yeah, children have to be treated a certain way before they can be disciplined. And that's where Help That Child came from.
Yeah, for me, one of the things I just picked from what you said now, having stumbled on your diary, from when you were 18, you were 18 and all that. So, this thing we sometimes imagine when, I know you're an educator, so you know what I'm talking about when we say things like, if your younger self had to confront your older self, you know what would your younger self say to your older self? So for you had the opportunity, you know to actually, with hindsight, imagine that these things I experienced when I was younger, if I had to be an adult in the life of my younger self, this is how I will deal with that. So you see, in other words, you're saying Help That Child was personal for you. It was
It is.
personal for you.
It is.
And I want to
It
just ask you a question. You know, you said it was triggered by something you saw, a conversation, and the responses, and you were kind of shocked at the responses from people who you thought should know better. The question here I would ask before we even go further into just breaking down your book and all that is, if you had to score, because you deal with parents a lot, 1 to 10, do you think parents were largely getting it right? Your honest opinion.
So, scoring, I'm a parent, so when I'm scoring, I have to score myself too.
Yes, now, yes.
I think one of the challenges that we have as parents is that nobody taught us how to be parents well, to be good parents. There's no school, and most times the examples that we had were also groping. They were trying to learn, so they may not have been fantastic examples. And then, as Africans, as Nigerians, we're also very religious people who will take one part of the Bible and hold onto that part of the Bible, and then we just keep saying it, oh, spread the rod for the child. Every other thing that the Bible says about the child, we're not doing it. So if I want to rate, I have met fantastic parents. I mean, I work with children, I own schools, I meet with parents every time. I've met fantastic parents that I learn from. I've met not so fantastic parents. I mean, I've met those.
It comes with the territory. It comes with the territory.
Yeah. So I would say it's difficult to put parents on a scale. I will tell you, Pastor, and it's very
Okay, so
difficult.
even if you're not putting them on a scale, you just have to be like, this is a no holds barred session, right? So you really need to let us, because if everything was as it should be, I don't think Help That Child will be needful in this season. But because there are some glitches you found were present. There's some gaps you think need to be filled. So, what are those gaps? Let me not put you on the spot and say score parents. So, what are the gaps that you think help that child will serve to fill in the scheme of parenting?
Okay, so what we have right now, what I have observed, we have two kinds of parents, and I started the book by talking about the different kinds of parents. I see a rise in parents who are authoritative, just want this is how it has to be done. Okay, which is not so bad. Then we have a rise in those who are fully permissive, who are saying, "Don't talk to my child. This is the 21st century."
What did you call the first kind of parents? What did you call the first kind of parents?
We have authoritative parents. Okay.
The authoritative parents, okay?
Yes, those who are authoritative. Okay. Which is good because the authoritative parent looks at every mistake the child makes as an opportunity to teach. So we say they're teaching moments. They're moments you can instruct the child and help the child to grow. Then we have the authoritarian parents who feel that everything has to be done by force. Parenting is a fight between the child and the parent. So we have a lot of parents who do that, who just feel, they go to the school and tell the school, teach this child harder. Every mistake is held against the child. It doesn't look at the struggles that the child is going through. It's not even looking at the age. I mean, there's some ages that some things come up. For example, we call the teenage years the age of stress and storm, because the child is going through a lot of stress, and then of course it can become a storm. So we have the authoritarian who is not able to get a grip of his own emotion and takes that out of the child. Authoritative, then we have the authoritarian. Then we have
the authoritarian parents. I think the kind of parent to say he or she that must be obeyed.
Exactly. I have an example in the book, that a father kept, a child who was now an adult, had like a flashback into his childhood where his father was screaming, "Jeremy, shout, spell triangle." That's something I experienced growing up. I used to have this neighbor who would call his son and keep shouting, "Spell triangle." And then the boy would spell triangle wrong, and all we get him on the boy's head and all of that. So the child didn't have it in flashback. So yes, the authoritarian parent always thinks that it's a war. They feel weak when they are not out their might on the child, sometimes even on their partners or their spouses.
Exactly.
Then also we have the permissive parents on the other hand. Now, I would say we see even more of these, parents who usually in the middle class, upper middle class, who feel, well, we've got the money now. We have some level of comfort. We have house helps. We have a driver. So our children are king. Don't tell them what to do. No discipline.
Wow.
Teachers don't even, So they are the ones that go to school to fight the teachers to say, "Why did you tell the child? Why did you do this to my child? Why did you, very permissive." They're the ones that have no boundaries, no structure. The child is allowed to do whatever they want. Whether it's positive, whether it's negative, it's okay. It's okay, you're fine. As long as you're fine as your mom. And then of course, finally we have the neglectful ones. The ones who just do not care.
What did you call them?
So, neglectful. They neglect their children. Okay. Yes. So they are the party poppers who go to and I saw these parents in my school. Honestly, in my schools, I've seen them in my practice. I've seen them consulting. They're the party poppers. They're the ones who may not even be going to parties. Sometimes it's the religion. They get so engrossed in religion. From one,
it can be anything.
Yeah, from one prayer meeting to the next prayer meeting, from the prayer meeting to one church meeting to their primary responsibility of the home, the children. The child is not, the child have the nurturing, they don't have the, so it's we have all of that. But the interesting thing is that at one time or the other, and that's why it was so difficult for me to give a score, at one time or the other, we will swing. We will swing. There are times when we become neglectful. You know, sometimes maybe you have a project. You have a project. Maybe you are going through some emotional, turmoil at that time. You may become neglectful. Maybe your child is ill for that brief period. You be permissive. And maybe you're in public and this child
to have anything.
Yeah. And then sometimes you're in public and this child is really getting on your nerves, and then you get to the authoritarian move, and you do all of that. And then sometimes you're authoritative. So we move. What we're saying is that this will contribute. Yes, it will contribute to the child you bring up. If you have a primary parenting style. However, it's not the only, it's not always the only reason children turn out, because you can see some children from permissive parents may turn out really well. And, some who have,
When such things happen, can you now say there's a place for, like you said, we can play within the ranks of different styles, and they're usually affected by factors and all that? Then in a case like where you say certain kids from neglectful parents might sometimes turn out right, what are those extra factors, that might make a child whose parents might be neglectful but might still turn out right? Because I remember in your book you talked about the different factors that can affect the child.
Yeah. So the parenting styles are not altogether responsible for, they're not the only factors that contribute to how the child turns out, but they're not the only factors responsible. Of course, we'll talk about the environment in which a child is growing. So if a child, for example, it's the mother is neglectful, but the father is an authoritative parent, then the child may have that balance, or there's a supportive environment, So even if you get a parent who is, quite authoritarian, but there's an environment that supports the child's, physical and emotional growth, so the environment plays a whole lot of roles, in the upbringing and how a child turns out.
A child turns out, yes. There was something you said. I don't know. Check. Is there something your audio? Because somebody just wrote here that there's like an echo on your end. So I don't know. Just check. So like I was saying, okay, there's something you said, and I remember listening to the audio. For people who probably didn't get to listen to it, when you said that child is not from hell, can you just explain it?
So I will start again from talking about the environment where the child grows up. There's so many things, and we talk about there are different kinds of environments: instructional environment, the psychological environment, the internal factors that are responsible for how a child behaves. So in terms of behavior, people are very quick to want to blame the devil and supernatural factors, and we're not saying that that's not true. Well, every time a child misbehaves, but sometimes we need to look at the child and say, why is this child acting this way? And how can I best help the child? So the child may not necessarily, or is not even from hell. You need to settle down and look at this child and say, what is this child trying to communicate? So as behavior analysts, we say every behavior is communication. If a child
every behavior is communication.
Yes, every behavior is communication. Every time somebody acts out, look at it, even within the marriage, every time someone acts a certain way, it's because the person is trying to communicate something at all times. It's either the person wants attention, or the person wants to escape, I don't want to do this, or the person has an inner need an inner need, which could be psychological, which could be a mental health challenge or a sensory feeling that the person wants to communicate. Or it could just, every behavior is communication. And when we start to look at behaviors from that point of view, then we start knowing how to address the behaviors. So when in a school environment or at home, a child starts to act up, a child starts to disrupt the class, the child becomes, the child becomes, in quotes, what they would say, this child has become a nuisance,
A nuisance, yeah.
Saying to parents, to teachers, to educators is, calm down, try to find out what this child is trying to communicate. It's very important.
I think that's an important aspect that people should examine, because like you just said it, every behavior is communication, even amongst adults, right? A woman sits down, she's hissing or acting a certain way, something, there's a catalyst that provoked that behavior. So you're now saying now that we should eliminate all the possible things or reasons why we think a child acts a certain way. And we shouldn't just generalize and say, oh, believing that we know what is wrong with the child. Because I think, even when we have babies, they will always tell you babies don't cry for any reason. There must be something. They're either hungry, they're either colicky, or whatever the case may be. So let me ask you a question now. If you have already eliminated whatever reasons or thing the child is trying to communicate, what else as a parent? Because I think, Daisy, you have to agree that there's some kids that are incorrigible. What would you tell a parent of such a child?
Every behavior can be handled. And Pastor Nene, I say it as Nigerians will say, I say it with my full chest.
Your full chest.
Every behavior.
Okay.
It may not be as fast as we want, but every behavior can be addressed. If we can get the reason for that behavior, why is that? What is that child trying, or what is that individual trying to communicate? I'll give you an example. One of the most common means or common ways that we try to address these incorrigible children is to quickly whip out the cane, right? Okay.
Exactly.
So we want to take the cane and, this child, you're always, your room is always untidy, for example, or this child is always not doing the homework or something, and then you take out that cane to hit the child. Now, if you don't know the reason behind the behavior, you may actually be aggravating that behavior. You may actually be making it worse.
Okay.
So in the school environment, yes, in the school environment, we have children who disrupt class for different reasons. Some children just disturb in the class because they want attention. And then, or even at home, I want attention from my mom. The only time my mom pays attention to me is when I'm misbehaving. So the child is, the behavior is being reinforced by the mother. The mother or the father is teaching the child that if you want attention, just behave badly. Once you behave badly, you will behave badly because that is the only time daddy and mommy will come to school. That's the only time they will call a meeting at home and put the child, and that child is just an attention seeker. So imagine calling a family meeting for an attention seeker. You just gave him an audience. You just gave him an audience. So if you understand why the child, or another one, let's take this example. A child acts up at home, maybe is washing the dishes, and then cracks one of them. And the mom saying, oh yeah, come out for them, you not break all for me. All you have just done is you have helped that child to escape. The child didn't want to do that work, and you have said, stop doing it. And then you are started yelling, but the child has ultimately won, in quotes. And that's because you don't know why the child did what he did. Oh, I like to stay alone. And then because I like to stay alone, each time I go on the family table to eat, I know my parents don't like me making all of those noises. So I will make those noises so that they will say, John, go to your room.
Oh my
John,
goodness.
go to your room.
I'm stumped, honestly.
So
Do you
basically,
know?
you actually, as a parent, you're increasing those behaviors instead of reducing them. So why is my child acting the way he's acting? I will tell you one more story, Pastor Nene. So I had a teenager who worked under me in church a couple of years ago, and she was a nymphomaniac. It was bad. It was bad. She could just get up and call the man repairing what's it called, shoes. You know, the people who go
Oh,
around with the.
yeah,
She
yeah,
could just
yeah.
call them in to say, okay, so can we go here? She's the one that would, you know, call them in. And she was about 14, 15 at the time. It was bad. But this girl was a fantastic singer. And they suspended her from the teens choir at the time. Everybody knew she had a problem, so she had stopped coming to church for a while. Sometimes she would still come when there's a special program. And then the pastor's wife, talked to me about her. I didn't even know as much as I know now. So we started talking. And what I asked her, so let's go back. And then I discovered that her mother passed on, her father had remarried and had thrown her to her sister who wasn't married. She didn't have any attention from anyone. She didn't have no love. So the only time she could feel loved, was when
She had sex.
yeah, there was a man with her. So she kept going back because she yearned for those moments until it became a habit. So what did we do? We locked up on her. We brought her back into church, made her the head of, and by the time we made her head of the teens choir, she was still knee deep inside that habit. It was a point where we would say, okay, so how many people did you sleep today? She says, oh, only two. So you tried two. Let's see if we can move to one. So that's how we got her to the point. But I can tell you now, she's the last time I heard from her, she was heading the provincial choir, and then she's a graduate now. And that's what understanding the reasons for behavior can do. So for that child who we think is the child from hell, it's just pausing to say, what could this child be going through? Can I form a personal relationship with this child so that this child can tell me, what goes inner, and it could be bullying, it could be feeling inadequate, it could be a low self-esteem, it could be bad dating, it could be anything. But we need to help the child by calming down. We have to be the one to calm down. You remember that small boy that said, calm down. We need to.
We should be the ones to calm down.
Yeah. And then listen and help the child.
Do you know? I'm kind of speechless on this end, Daisy, and I have to be honest with you because you've just told us every behavior can be addressed if we get to know the reason behind the behavior. Do you believe that so many of us have made great mistakes? And that is because we assume we know why the child is behaving a certain way. So you're saying to us, we shouldn't assume. And I'm hard put to say that probably because, you're also a behavior scientist, Daisy, by training and all. So it's probably, I guess, what your book is trying to do or will do ultimately, truly, is to change the narrative. And I'm beginning to have clarity. And that's the fact that we need to go back instead of, we're good at it as parents, even when it doesn't concern us, when it's not our kids, we're good at, placing the blame. And the child is not well trained now, and at their parents, and all of that. Meanwhile, it might just be the child acting up. You said something now, and I'm going to even apply it in my own home for my youngest. That these kids, they already understand what they do. That the child who will break a plate knows that mommy will send me away and I won't wash plates again. So that means the next time the child is asked to wash a plate, he will just, you know, willfully break another one. And the mother comes. So it's actually a vicious circle. And we as parents, we're enabling that behavior.
We called it, in the book it's there, we called it a self-perpetuating circle. A
Okay.
circle that is something else, a self-perpetuating circle. It's in the book. Let me see if I can see what page that is. So it's somewhere in the book. So you have the self-perpetuating circle. You know, I do this, mommy reacts this way, and then she does this. So I do this because she did that, and then we just continue.
I hope, I know part of your this thing, the vision for this movement you're talking about, yes, to go to school and all that. But don't you think it will be also of great impact if you get to speak to parents directly? Because I'm telling you, we do things like, okay, we have parents education for for drug addiction, for this addiction, this addiction. I think if this is taught as a fundamental thing, I hope you know that all those behavioral issues, the kids, we ultimately have workshops for and all that. If the whole movement of help that child, it started at the foundation level, most parents will not just be armed with information, will also be ready to face whatever pops up. So what are your plans in this direction, Daisy? What are your plans? Because this message should go beyond just, because most people think, oh, it's about the book, you know. So what are the plans? Because I think parents should be, an integral part of this movement. What are your plans for parents?
So one of the things we'll be doing, it's what I'm doing tonight, speaking on
Yeah.
shows, trying to go on the media. So I'm going to have some, like a kind of a media tour and,
Okay.
speak with parents via the mass media. We hope to be able to work with some schools so we already have a plan to reach out to some schools, and hopefully we are able to reach out to parents, teachers, associations, with some level of training, with some level of sensitization. But it goes beyond that. Parents also have to recognize when they need to ask for help. So it's one thing to say, I want to help that child. Sometimes you need someone else who is neutral, who can look. So it's not just a book. After publishing the book, actually, it was already in the market. I decided to write a workbook. So there's actually a workbook now. So you're not just reading this book, you sit down and then you can analyze who you are, first and foremost, as a parent. Because we have to do right by the next generation. People say, my parents beat me. They left me at home and I turned out well. And I keep asking them, who told you we turned out well? With the rage on the streets, with the crime and corruption, with the fact that we cannot listen to simple rules. Do not throw litters here. And there's a huge dump there. Traffic rules we cannot obey. Who says we turn out well? With gender-based violence, it's there. And we cannot say we turn out well. With the increase in depression, suicide, murder, we did not turn out well.
We did not turn out well at all.
It is just the grace of God that we are not consumed. That's the truth. What we have to do right by the next generation, we have to provide them with those skills that will help. So the beating does not, I'm not against spanking in quotes, because people will talk about spare the rod, spoil the child. But
exactly.
For everything, there are rules guiding them. There are rules. So you can't just hit a child just because the Bible, you read one place in the Bible. You have forgotten where the Bible says, train up a child. Train. Training is It's a conscious effort. It does not happen in one day. It's something you do repeatedly. You cannot train unless you love. You cannot train unless you have a relationship. You cannot train unless there's a connection. And that's what we're asking for. Build those connections with the children. Find out what is going on with their lives. Be parents to them. Parenting, guide them. Don't become their enemies, that when they hear you coming, they all will go to, and you don't even know your child.
And don't be their best friend.
We're not also saying be best friend, because you were not called to be best friend. If you end up being best friend, then that's fine. But do your role as, first and foremost, as a parent, which is to nurture, to groom, to guide, to train, and ensure that your child, or those children, and when I say child, not necessarily your biological children, the children either in church under you, your neighbor's children, your nephews, your nieces, the people, everyone, if you're a teacher, one way or the other, they become responsible adults.
Exactly.
In the future. So we need to save the next generation. We need to save the next generation. That's the truth.
Yeah, I know it starts with you and I, like you said. So the question I want to ask quickly, you've talked about authoritative, authoritarian, neglectful, and permissive. There's this one that I usually hear about, especially when we're doing like addiction and all that, and I'm sure you would know about it. So I want you to speak a bit about it. It's called helicopter parenting. Yes, I would
So
like for you
the helicopter parents usually could either be an authoritarian parent or could be a permissive one, depending on what. So the helicopter parent is a parent who is always hovering, and you're not allowing the child to grow. Basically you have something to say about every move. Now what happens is the child is not now able to learn coping skills. We call them executive function skills. So the child begins to lack executive function skills that, such as being able to plan or order their life, have a schedule. Problem solving is not there because daddy will do it for me. And so that's helicopter parenting. You are just hovering over the child to see everything the child is doing. Before there's a problem, you want to solve the problem. Before something comes up, you want to be involved, and it just continues that way. So it's also not a very fantastic parenting it's not a very fantastic parenting style. However, there are times that it is useful. Again, that's why we say there's no parenting style that is completely useless. For example, if my child is struggling with, or if a child is struggling with drug addiction, for example, at that time I will become helicopter because I want to be sure that there's no relapse. So in terms of what psychologically would say, every parenting style will have a time that it will be useful.
That's useful, yes.
Yes, don't overdo it. But we have the helicopter parents who want to, hover every time. They want to be around. They want to make decisions for the children. They want to be a part. The child is not allowed to leave home. The parents
always hide the apron strings.
Yeah, but then there's a time. But so then there's a time that is very good to be a helicopter parent. So there was a time that my son went out. No, he came home with friends. It was his birthday, and then, he was becoming a teenager. And I said, okay, fine, you can have your friends come home. I didn't leave them in the living room for 5 minutes because we had boys, we had girls. Not because I don't trust them, but I just wanted to listen on. Listen in on what they have.
My dear, you can't help it. It gets to a point sometimes that you just need to know. And truly, that's helicopter parenting at its best. But you know that that's not you. That's not all you do. That sometimes you let them spread their wings. You know how to pull. You know how to bring back and all of that. So that's quite good. See, I heard all the things you say you have planned out, but I'll just urge that you also do like a help that child Zoom parents workshop. Where people register and all that, because for everything that you have in the book, it's not something we can just sit down and deal with in 1 hour. That's why we're also using the helicopter tactics to make sure we just touch, everywhere and all that. But most especially for those of you who are watching, this goes beyond, like you said, it goes beyond the book. But in order to understand what Daisy is saying, I will urge that you order the book and you get a copy. It's a fun time read, but very serious. You know, I know we know of for those of you who ever did philosophy, or you can even Google him, John Locke. He's a well-renowned philosopher who said anybody can learn anything at whatever age, as long as you approach it and you learn it in steps. So with the issue of parenting, especially, I mean, I have only one who is still a teenager, but even with the young adults I have, this book is still important because the job of a parent, no parent ever truly retires. You know, I have my mom who is still trying to micromanage me up until this point. So I believe very strongly that if we can get this book by the time that all this fallouts of having to, have a workshop and all of that, we already will come prepared, having a knowledge, just even if it's scanty, a scanty knowledge of what she has to offer to us. Because truly, she said something that struck a nerve with me. So many of us think, oh, we had tough childhoods, but we turned out okay. I mean, largely the adults are the ones who are giving us issues in this nation. We're giving ourselves issues. And it's that's no pass mark to say we succeeded, in our childhood, our teen years, as young adults, and the adults that we are today. So I think there's a place you reminded us that it's easier to repair, or is it to raise young people than repair broken adults? There's something. How does this thing
Yeah,
go?
yeah,
In your
yeah.
yeah, in your circle, it's something you could say a lot. So I want you to
Mm.
just throw some light on it. Why
Yeah.
do
So
you think it's important that we help the child now?
simple. We always say prevention is better than cure. It's always there. So it's better that we form those relationships with our children now. It's better that we teach them skills, and that I'm very big on teaching skills for coping instead of taking the shortcuts, which is to hit or to punish. It's better that we have, when I hear a lot of, older parents, aged parents say, oh, my children don't call. It's not at old age you want to form relationships. Relationships are formed when you're still young. And whether
That's
we
true.
like it or not, people have flashbacks. We try to wave it away, but it's there. And everything that happens in the life of a child leaves a stamp. It leaves a stamp. And it's going to mold that person to the individual that he becomes in the future. So it's very important that we form close relationships with our children. It's very important that we teach them skills to cope. It's very important that we live by example. And I'm very big on that. If you're saying don't be aggressive, then you cannot respond to every mistake with aggression. Because you're the child's, you are instructional material for that child. The child looks at you, the child learns from you. So when you have your child fighting in public, yeah, you may not have fought the father or fought the mother at home, but you have responded to his mistakes by hitting, slapping and doing all of that. So they feel that each time someone, hurts them, the best way to address, that feeling of hurt is to also give back in aggression. So we need to be able to, work around that as parents, form those meaningful relationships so that our children would become better adults in the future. I happen to employ a lot of young people as teachers, as therapists, and I will tell you that a lot of people do not pass through the interview stage, not because they don't have fantastic grades,
Why?
but either because they don't have good problem-solving skills or they have the wrong attitude. And the
Wow.
attitude is everything. So it's something we have to teach. We need to see these children as children handed over to us to mold, to guide, and to make responsible adults as much as it's possible. So that's what this book is saying. We are saying enough of the aggression, enough of the child abuse, the rate of child abuse we see on a daily basis. It's appalling. You know, during my lunch, I spoke about a young girl of about 4 or 5. We were called, then I was still in Port Harcourt, we're called in, and someone raised an alarm on Facebook saying that a young girl of about 4 or 5 had been sexually abused by a man of 35. So I got interested in that case, and I went there. We were about 4 advocates on that case. She was abused repeatedly, that it had affected her gait. So when she's walking, she walks with her legs wide open. And her parents did not observe it. Now, when we asked this girl, you know, why did you not tell your mother? Simple, she will beat me. And that child was right, because right in the police station, right in the vehicle where we're taking them to, you know, where we had to go to court. So we went right. You will see the mom give her a slap. Sit down well. You know, like it was her fault. And we kept saying, stop treating this girl that way. The hardship in the society, you know, we always say that punishment is reinforcing to the punisher, which means when I'm happy, I tend to punish less. When I'm angry, I tend to punish more. So punishment is reinforcing to the punisher. And we do know how Lagos can be, how the Nigerian streets can be. So you are stressed from work, and you are angry with that child for no reason, and you lash out. It's just a transfer of the stress you have been through. Not really, you know, the punishment is not always commensurate with the action or the inaction of the child. So those are the things we are saying. Yes, punishment is okay. We're not saying do not punish, but there are other means of punishing that will teach a skill, that will teach the child self-control, that will teach the child how to behave, you know, properly, even when you are not there. And that's what we're talking about.
Awesome. Quickly, I want to put up a question somebody asked. Let me put it up. Okay. She says, if we make them, that's our talking about our children, if we make them our friends, how then do we train them? Do we train our friends? Can we make them friends and still correct them well?
Children learn best from people they love. I'll tell you that as an educator. If we put a teacher in class that the children do not love, the grades drop. And it's proven even by science. So yes, the children can be your friends. At the same time, you can still train them. What happens on the football pitch? The coach does not teach the footballers to score goals by hitting their heads or using a cane. He uses good words, reinforcements, well done when they are doing good. Now, if you focus more on what is good, in the book I use the statement, catch them being good. Catch them being good. And focus on their being good, rather than focusing on the negative sides of it. So that's what we mean by being their friends. Being their friends means form positive relationships with them. We're not saying go hang out and play football with them, but by all means, that's part of it.
Yeah, but it's good. It's good you explained it. It's good you explained it.
Yeah. So be their friends, have that meaningful relationship, a positive relationship. Let's go to the Bible. I mean, a lot of us are Christians. What kind of relationship do we have with God? God said the soul that sinneth shall die. Does he kill us every time we sin? No. No, he doesn't do that. So we still have that communication with him. He is our father and our friend. That's why there's not a friend like Jesus. So he's like our father and he's our friend. So be their mother and their friend.
Wow. So I think you just put it in perspective, because most of us will shy away from, no, they're not my friend. We probably because we have redefined what friendship means. And I'm happy you took us back to the Bible, because Jesus, who is master, is still our friend. So that has just put it in perspective. So I believe that question has been answered, and it's been answered for me as well, because I famously said, look, I'm not your friend, I'm your mother, this and that. It's just because we just believe that friendship is about playing in the sandbox, not understanding that friendship can be wholesome, you know. And it's really giving me clarity. I want to put something on the screen that you famously say, and that's it's part of from your book as well. If your student is not behaving as expected, take a look at the environment. This includes the physical, social, instructional, and psychological environment. I know you had said a little bit about it when we're talking about that child is not from hell, but I just want you to throw some more light on this, because is it, when you say if your student, is it only the teacher that has, you know, is able to deal with this, or when you talk about students, are you talking about parents also looking at their children?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Actually, I think this is also from the book. And so in the
Yes,
book, I
in the
was
book,
talking to
yes.
parents and then I was talking to teachers. There are some
Yes.
chapters for parents, then I think
Yes.
about two chapters that focused on the teachers and the school. So we're looking at
Yes.
the environment, and we're all products of our environment. What we're saying is, if behavior is not at the point you want it, look at the environment. So we talk about preemptive strategies, addressing the behavior before it even happens. An example, if you put a drum of water
Preemptive strategies.
right in the corner of your living room, okay, and you have a child who is very active, there's no gainsaying. In a couple of hours, he will end up in that drum of water. And that's because the physical environment has not been equipped for him. It has not been suited to who he is as a person. If your child is not doing what you want the child to do, always ask yourself, what is in this environment that shouldn't be there?
Mm-hmm.
Or what is in this environment, what is not in this environment that should be there? If you want a 7-year-old to do the dishes, you may need to equip him with a stool, okay, to
Yeah.
stand properly so that the hands don't tire out. So that's modifying the environment. Sometimes it's a social environment. You could have a child who is extrovertish, or who likes attention a lot, or wants to be with people, socially wants to communicate, wants to form relationships with people. You will kill that child if you don't provide outlets for that need. So if
Oh
the
my
child wants
God.
to be, there's some children we give birth to that are social butterflies.
Yes,
You
yes,
just
yes, yes,
have to
yes.
create that environment for that child if you want the best out of the child. So
So
that's what we mean by looking at the environment. What are the things that should be there? If I
for
have
the
a
child to
child,
thrive.
yeah, if I have a child who always likes to be in front of the computer, I may change that by, yes, giving that computer, but giving things that are cognitively stimulating.
Beneficial, yeah. Stimulating,
Yeah,
yeah.
so I have modified that environment to fit that child. And I want to create a structure to say, okay, you're allowed to have the screen for just 30 minutes, or for just a few hours, but not just necessarily saying, don't do this, don't do that. So look at what is in the environment that shouldn't be there, or look at what should be in that environment that has not been put there. That
Wow.
also would help.
I won't lie to you. We're like running out of time, but I don't know about anybody else, but this has been quite an educative session. At least, if anything else, this thing about preemptive strategies is another flashpoint for me. It's just like when they say things like, you cannot put goats with yam. The goat will eat the yam. You
Exactly.
understand? And you just said it. Sometimes it's almost as if parents, we just teleguide our kids to do bad things. We already know their patterns, and you still put it expecting that this child should know better. Meanwhile, we should know better and do better. So truly, I think this strategy of catching them being good,
Catch them being good.
catch them being good is something we should apply. And if we do it hand in hand with with these preemptive strategies to go a long way. I won't lie to you. I wish I had, when I was watching an excerpt of the launch, there's something the Lady Asian said, and for me, it resonated. She said, if she knew then what she's getting now from the book, life would have been easier. Most of the things you just discussed this night, I mean, this is not flattery. It's with utmost humility. I say, if I had known them, you know, but I guess I'm lucky. I still have one who is in his preteen. So,
And you have
in
many
fact, I think
spiritual
I've been,
children.
and that's the truth. Then that's true. That's true. So I don't think it's something we should just skirt around. It's something that, in fact, Daisy, I said to you a couple of months ago, I said, this whole lockdown and everything, you're one of the few people who are like decided that you were not just going to let it go, make hay while the sun shines. You were going to take whatever lemons had been thrown at us during the season and made lemonades, and all that. You chose to do this. I will not call it on a whim. Without the passion, you wouldn't have done it. Trust me. I know how tedious it is to write, but there was something that triggered you. And my sincere desire is that for everybody who gets to read this book, there will be that trigger. Imagine if every parent is aware of most of the things that are said in this book. To say the truth, I'm sure you're probably not the first person who has thought of this, but there's one thing: when you have passion behind something, you know, it goes a really, 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 really long way. So I'd like to say a big thank you. But first of all, I would like to have you explain what the 3 steps are to getting this book. 3 easy steps to order your copy. So how can we go about it? 3 easy steps to order your copy of this
Okay,
book.
you can go to my website, www.daisyjonathan.com / you'd say the help dash that dash child. You could also go to my Instagram page at the Daisy Jonathan, DTHE Daisy Jonathan, and you would see the link to buying the book. The book is available in Nigeria on my website, and also help that child, help dash that dash and then child.
Help,
The book
help, help.
Dash, there's a dash.
Okay, just a second. Help dash.
That dash
Okay.
child.
Okay.
Okay. It's also
Now
available on
what's your IG?
yes,
What's your IG handle? IG handle.
Daisy Jonathan, THE Daisy Jonathan.
Okay.
The Daisy Jonathan.
Okay.
And it's also available on over 12 international platforms, including Amazon. So wherever you are in the world, UK, Canada, US, France, you will get a copy on Amazon. You will get a copy on all the major bookstores, including Kobo Books, and all of that. You would get a link to that on my Instagram handle, my IG. You get that. So visit the website or visit my Instagram handle, and that's the first step. The second step is to click on buy now, and then you can order from wherever you are in the world. and then put the number of copies. Now, number of copies, we don't want you to buy just one.
Just
Buy for
one,
your child's
exactly.
teacher, yes. Buy for Sunday school teacher. Buy for that your neighbor that is always screaming at the child. Buy for your sister that seems to be overwhelmed by the child's behavior. Just buy. And yeah. While at it, you could go through my website, and if you do want to consult with me, I will be available.
Yeah. Wow, Daisy. Thank you very, very much for just finding time to be with us today. Because one thing I believe very strongly in the power of knowledge, the wealth of knowledge, because it's something that money cannot buy. So,
True.
final words to parents listening, final words.
So, final words, chapter 1 of the book, I wrote there that there's no book that can adequately prepare you for the journey of parenting. There's no course you would undertake, actually. However, the more you are exposed to knowledge and skills, the more equipped you are to work with the children that God brings your way. I would say straight up that the children are for us to care for, they are not for us. They're borrowed to us, and we have borrowed time with them. We have to make
Yeah.
great use of that time and ensure that when we're called home any day, we can answer to our Creator and say, yes, the child you handed over to me, I did my best.
Wow. So thank you very much, Daisy. I hope we get the link for your workshop as soon ASAP as soon as possible. Thank you very
I
much.
will try.
So good night. From me, it's good night. From you, Daisy, say ciao
Thank
ciao.
you so much. It's good night. See you all. Thanks for having me tonight. God
Thank
bless
you.
you. Help that
And
child.
yes, and guys, yes, help that child. And guys, this will be available on YouTube by tomorrow morning. So
Oh,
you can
okay.
always get the link from Daisy's page and all. And I'm sure she'll probably would upload this as one of her media files on her website
Yeah.
as well. So good night. God bless you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.